Hey you guys, it's Peter and welcome to my channel, Peter Likes Books. And today I am doing a review of a book that we read for Peter's book club. If you don't know, which you don't know is a lot, Peter, that's me. I'm talking about myself in the third person. I have a book club and my book club is called Peter's Book Club. I have a co-partner in crime and it's perfect that she's my partner in crime because we're doing a year of true crime. And her name is Mel, and she is a bookstagram. She's a bookstagrammer. Her bookstagram is GINGERGONZOREADS, and I will list it below. But this is our second year of doing the book club. We started it like a year ago, April. And we have 1,600 plus members now. It's very, very exciting. And every month we read a different book. And this year we decided that we were going to do a year of true crime. Now, let me see if I can go through every month and make sure that, okay. So, I don't know what we read for January. January we read The Stranger Beside Me by Anne Rule about Ted Bundy. February, we read In Cold Blood by Truman Capote. March, we read, I don't know, something like My Father the Serial Killer about the BTK Killer by Carrie Rollins. Not my favorite book of the year. April, we read Columbine by David Cullen because it was the 20th anniversary of Columbine. And that was April. May, okay, we're in June right now. May is the book that I'm reviewing right now. No, is it? No. What did we read in May? Why can't I remember May? May. Let's go in here and look and see what book I read for May. Why can't I remember? Well, June, we read Killer Klown about John Wayne Gacy. What did I read and what did we read in May? Oh, Lost Girls, an unsolved American mystery. I gave it 2 stars. It was horrible. I hated it. Oh my God, it was so bad. Anyway, it was about the Long Island serial killer. They're turning it into a Netflix movie. Wait for the Netflix movie because I'm telling you the book was horrible. It was so bad. So anyway, today though, we are reviewing, or I am going to review, not we, because you're just watching the video, Killer Klown, the John Wayne Gacy murders. Here's the cover of it. It's very scary if you don't like clowns. Let me read you the description. I actually was like, have I already done this review? And I had to go in and look at my channel and I was like, I didn't do this review. Who was John Wayne Gacy? The model citizen whose business skills were admired by his peers, the hospital volunteer whose sweet-faced clowning lightened the patient's days, the member of the JCs who was a civic-minded friend of the community, the depraved maniac who sodomized, tortured, and killed 33 young men and boys. Shortly before Christmas of 1978, a teenage boy disappeared from the drugstore where he worked. He would be the final victim of John Wayne Gacy's horrifying compulsion. Then, 10 days after the boy's disappearance, detectives finding a human bone in the crawl space of Gacy's house, dug into the lime-covered ground. With mounting horror, they pulled bone after bone from Gacy's suburban home, until finally they had gathered the remains of 28 more youths who had fallen prey to the killer clown. 16 pages of shocking photos and an unnerving true story of murder, terror, and justice at Dallas Morning News. Okay, and I gave this book 5 resounding stars. It was fantastic. I think it is probably my favorite book that we have read this year for the True Crime, Year of True Crime Peter's Book Club. So, if you're looking for a really good, and it's very scary too, okay, true crime book, I would definitely recommend this. It is, the one that we read was by Terry Sullivan and Peter Macon. Terry Sullivan is the assistant district attorney at the time that the case is going on. The whole book is told from the investigator's point of view, and I think that because of that, it is extremely interesting, and you don't see a lot of books that are from that point of view, but I have to say, or from true crime, they're usually told from like, you know, like a family member of like the person, or they're told by like a victim's point of view, or they're told just like with facts. Last year we read, and this is the reason why we did a year of true crime, we read I'll Be Gone in the Dark by Michelle McNamara, one woman's obsessive search for the Golden State Killer. It was fantastic. Sadly, she passed away while writing the book, but I became obsessed with the Golden State Killer case. And that began my rabbit hole of falling down podcasts, of which I'm now listening to a lot of podcasts, but it got me started listening to my favorite murder. Paul Holes, who was the investigator on the case that worked closely with Michelle McNamara, he came out and wrote a book that was an Audible exclusive that was called Evil Has a Name. Let me just tell you, you can tell while I'm talking about this, I know so much about this case, okay? I have read so many articles, I have watched so many interviews, I have watched so much about this case, I know so much about the Golden State Killer case. And it's very, very interesting. The thing about it is, Michelle McNamara's book, as well as Paul Holes' book, especially Paul Holes' book, Evil Has a Name, which is a fantastic Audible read. If you're wanting to do the trial 30-day month on Audible, and no, I'm not sponsored, but I wish I was, you should try, and you've never used your free credit over there, use it for Evil Has a Name if you enjoy true crime. Trust me, you will not be let down. And it really focuses a lot on the victims. You get to hear the victims' voices and stuff. But one of the really interesting things about both of those books was that it was told from the investigator's point of view. And I think that's why I really enjoyed the Killer Klown book as well, because it was told all from the investigator's points of view. You got to see John Gacy's arrogance. You got to see his manipulation, how calculated he was, all of it through the eyes of the investigators. I will also say that the book, I thought, was, it treated the victims with kindness. And what I mean by that is that when you read true crime, often, you know, the victims aren't treated very well in the telling of the book, that they're just kind of throwaways to the main course of the book. But when you read a book where they really are, like, they take into consideration the victims and the victims' families, it really makes a standout true crime book. Michelle McNamara did that in I'll Be Gone in the Dark, and Paul Holes did that definitely with Evil Has His Name, to the point where even a lot of the victims and the victims' families are heard speaking. I mean, they're a part of the book. You know, it's fantastic. Well, Killer Klown is the same way. And they talk a lot about the last boy, which is the reason why John Gacy was caught to begin with. It's how the investigation starts. And they talk a lot about his family and friends. And it's done very, very well. The end of the book with the new foreword so the whole book is, like, I would say half of it is about the 2 months, the month or two, well, it's December, so it'd be 2 weeks, I guess, leading up to the capture of John Wayne Gacy, which, when you're reading the book, you know is inevitable, because if you don't know, here, I'm going to ruin it for you, he's been executed. So his last words were, "Kiss my ass," which goes pretty much along with what we learn about John Gacy. But it's interesting when you're reading the book, because he literally, like, buys meals for the investigators. He sits there, he talks to them. He talks to them about how great he is. He's constantly throwing out stuff about how wonderful he is. And it just, you truly, truly see his arrogance and narcissism while reading the book. And the investigators, like, they're not stupid. They see through it all, you know? And I had really the only thing I knew about John Wayne Gacy was that he buried these bodies underneath his house. When you go in and you read about it, I will tell you, like, go into it, if you don't like scary books and you can't stomach a lot of true crime, this is not the book for you. It literally goes in and it talks about how they, like, tore apart the house and they took the bodies out from underneath the crawl spaces and things like that. I mean, in detail. I mean, it's very, very detailed. One of the favorite things about this book for me was at the very end, Terry Sullivan, like, who I said was a district assistant attorney on the case, he, I say that 5 times fast, right? My dog Pee-Pee is back here. He's literally, like, I think the air conditioning's too high. He's, like, shaking right next to me, little guy. But anyway, at the very end of the book, he goes back and he talks about, like, what he's been doing in the time since 1978 to 1980, when this case was going on. And the court case alone is just so interesting in the book. It was my least favorite part of the book, but even, like, reading that was interesting, because I'm not big on reading court cases in books. In this book, it was done really, really well. And they would talk about, like, how John Gacy was as soon as, like, the jurors and the people left the room, that he like, literally could turn it off and on. But Terry Sullivan goes back and he interviews and talks to all of the people that were on the case, you know, 40 years ago, 50 years ago. Well, when was it? 70? So 78? 98. I should know this, shouldn't I? Well, I was born in 72, and I'm 47, so 40 years ago. Okay, something like that. But anyway, he goes back and he finds out where they've all been, and he talks a lot about how this case affected him, not just then, but through his entire life. And he talks about who he is today as a result of it, and the things that he's done. And one of the things that he talks about is that, like, you know, they were so united as a force that when they were going through this, they were like, it was like a sinking ship theory. Like, they were all going down in it together. But then when it was over, it was like kind of like this anticlimax, that when the case was done, the investigators went back to their families and they went back to other cases because there was a solve, and it was just kind of like this, like, lull that they had gotten so close and working on this case together. And it was really interesting, you know, hearing about the police investigation from that point of view. And really, I think what it did was it humanized the detectives, as well as going in and showing, like, different sides of investigation. I mean, DEA is involved in this, and there's undercover undercover, and there's like all these people that have different knowledge and how it works with the district attorney's office. I mean, it is really a prime example of how the police officers, investigators, homicide detectives, and how it also becomes like a state case versus a county case and all that kind of stuff. It's extremely interesting from that point of view. I gave this book 5 out of 5, and I will tell you what gave it the 5 for me on the end was the Terry Sullivan. And I know when we talked about this in the live stream for the book club, a lot of people didn't like this. But the part for me that just brought it to a 4.5 to a 5 for me, because there always has to be that learning experience, was the very end by Terry Sullivan, and how he went in and he talked about like who he was today and what he had learned from this case and how it had forever changed him, and going back and talking about these people that he had become so close with at that time, you know. And that to me was so endearing. I was crying at the end of this book because of that part. I'm so thankful for Terry Sullivan adding that part in the book. You know, it really humanized it. It humanized it from the experience that I think sometimes when we watch these shows like 48 Hours or 2020, you know, we don't really think about the investigators and what they're going through and how it affects their families and how it affects their friends. There's one investigator in the book who has a heart attack shortly after the court case. And his family really does believe that it's related to the stress that he got from this case. So I think it's, you know, an interesting point of view that we get to see that and see what like really happens to these investigators when they're going through all of this. It was a fantastic book. It was a fantastic true crime read if you're looking for one. If you're wanting to join Peter's book club, this month we are reading Zodiac, about the Zodiac Killer. You can go over to the Goodreads thread. It is listed below. Literally all you have to do to join is say, I'm a member of Peter's book club. And you can link, if you want to join the book, the Goodreads thread, you can, and you can go over there and you can share your thoughts and your feelings about whatever. The live stream is the last Sunday of every month at 4 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Mel and I co-host it, and we talk about the book of the month. And I will also be doing a review video at some point talking about my feelings. If you're part of the book club, please put an extended comment in this comment section of this video sharing your thoughts. That's one way to participate in the book club, of what you thought about this book if you didn't get a share in the live stream. And if you didn't read this one and you're looking for a great, this is a really good summer read even though it takes place at Christmas time, I would highly suggest this book. And I will tell you, don't read it outside in the dark because it's very, very scary. Anyway, I love you guys, and I will see you in my next video. Bye.